The wind screamed through the broken shafts of the mining tunnels, carrying with it the bitter dust of narration, sharp, metallic, almost alive as it stung the lungs. Cale pressed his scarf tighter across his mouth, his small hands gripping the rusted ladder as he climbed down into the forbidden sector. The signs above warned of restricted access, but hunger didn't care for rules. Down here, forgotten food crates from the last supply run sometimes slipped through the cracks of order, and that meant survival. He landed softly on the metal grate below. The air was thick, almost humming with static from the narration veins pulsing faintly in the rock. Their faint bluish light painted everything in shades of ghostly cold. The colony's main shifts had ended hours ago, only the enslaved worked now, the ones whose collars glowed with faint red lights. Cale knew better than to let them see him. Humans weren't supposed to be here after curfew, especially not children. He crept through the shadows, steps quiet, scanning for anything edible. The tunnels opened into a wide chamber filled with mining rigs, the sound of drills echoing faintly in the distance. That was when he heard it, soft, muffled sobbing. He froze. Between the support pillars, huddled behind a half-crushed mining crate, was a figure small enough to be a child like him, though the skin shimmered faintly in the blue light. She was curled up, clutching her knees, her thin clothes torn and covered in grime. A faint collar blinked around her neck, and her white hair glowed faintly, like a candle flame in the dark. Cale crouched lower, heart pounding. He'd seen aliens before, of course. The Ilari were common in the mines, but never this close, and never without guards nearby. "Hey," he whispered, barely more than breath. The girl flinched, shrinking tighter against the wall. The glow of her veins brightened in fear. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said quickly. "I just thought you were hurt." Her voice came out cracked, fragile. "You shouldn't be here. They'll punish you." Cale shrugged. "They already do. Might as well make it worth something." She looked up then, and he caught her eyes, large, silver, reflective like mercury. Not human eyes. They didn't seem to see him so much as through him. He pulled something from his pocket, a half-eaten ration bar, stale but still good, and held it out. "Here." She hesitated. "I can't." "You can," he said. "They won't know." Slowly, she reached out, trembling, and took it. Her hands were small and elegant, fingers tipped with faintly luminous nails. She bit into the bar with quiet desperation, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. Cale sat beside her, pretending not to watch. "What's your name?" he asked. The girl chewed, swallowed, then whispered, "Lyra." "I'm Cale." He smiled, though his mouth was hidden by the scarf. "You from one of the warp crews?" She nodded weakly. "They make us guide ships. My head hurts all the time. If we fall asleep, the collars burn." Cale's fists clenched. He'd seen the burns before on others, dark scars where the metal met skin. "That's wrong." "It doesn't matter," she said softly. "Nothing changes here." He looked around. The tunnel stretched endlessly, silent except for the distant hum of machines. He'd grown up believing the same thing. But something about her, her calm voice, her glow in this endless dark, made him want to believe otherwise. "Someday," he said quietly, "I'll leave this place. Go off-world. Maybe to one of the free colonies." She looked at him, eyes faintly glowing. "There are no free colonies." "Then I'll make one," he said stubbornly. "You'll see. I'll come back for you too. You shouldn't have to stay here." Lyra's expression changed, the faintest flicker of something like surprise, or hope. "You'd come back? For me?" He nodded. "Yeah. When I'm free. I'll find you. And we'll both be free. I swear it." She blinked, as if trying to understand the word swear. Then, slowly, she said, "Swear is a promise." "Yeah. The strongest kind." Her small fingers brushed the metal of her collar. "Strong promises break," she said softly. "Then I'll make one that doesn't." For a long moment, they sat in silence. The hum of the machines faded to background noise, the light of the narration veins flickering like heartbeat. Kale reached out, not touching her but close enough that their shadows merged on the rock. She whispered, "If you go, don't forget my name." "I won't," he said. "Lyra of," he hesitated. "Where are you from?" "Elithra," she said, the word carrying a melody he'd never heard before. "But it's gone." Kale frowned. "Then I'll remember it for you." Something clanged deep in the tunnels, a patrol, voices echoing. Lyra's eyes widened in panic. Kale ducked behind a crate, holding still as bootsteps approached. Two guards, armored in black with red visors, scanned the area. One muttered, "Sector 11. Movement on the tracker." Kale held his breath. Lyra didn't move, didn't even blink, though faint light rippled under her skin. One of the guards stepped closer. The hum in the air grew louder, like static building, invisible energy vibrating between the walls. The guard froze mid-step, visor flickering. The other turned sharply. Power surge. Then both men staggered, dropping their scanners. The tunnel lights flickered and died. When they came back on, both guards were slumped on the ground, unconscious. Lyra's collar blinked erratically, smoking faintly. She was shaking, eyes dimming as if the effort had drained her. Kale stared at her, wide-eyed. "What did you?" "I didn't mean to," she whispered, voice trembling. "It just happened." He didn't understand, but it didn't matter. He grabbed her hand. "Come on. We have to go before they wake up." They ran through the tunnels, feet echoing softly on the steel floor. For a moment, it felt like freedom. The first he'd ever known. When they reached the old ventilation shaft that led back to the slums, Lyra stopped. "I can't go with you," she said. "They'll track me." The collar. Kale turned to protest, but she stepped back, eyes glowing faintly again. "Go, Kale. Before they find you." He hesitated. Then he said it again, firmly, like it mattered more than anything he'd ever said, "I'll come back for you. I swear." Lyra smiled faintly, the first real smile he'd ever seen on her face. "Then I'll wait." He climbed the shaft, turning once to look down. The light from her skin flickered softly in the dark, a single glow among the shadows of the mine. By the time he reached the surface, the alarms were already blaring. But Kale didn't hear them. He only heard the echo of her name, carrying through the dust and wind of Tarsus 9, Lyra, Elithra, promise. And somewhere deep below, in the tunnels of the dying world, a small alien girl whispered to herself a word she had never known before, hope. The sirens tore through the sleeping colony like the scream of a dying machine. Kale woke to the sound of shattering metal and the low, rolling roar of the mines collapsing. The walls of the slum barracks shook violently, dust raining from the ceiling. Someone shouted for everyone to get out. He grabbed his boots, stumbled over other bodies in the dark, and ran. The air was thick with smoke and heat, emergency lights flickered red across the narrow corridors. He burst out into the open, coughing. The sky over Tarsus 9 burned with streaks of orange as explosions lit the horizon. Mining towers were collapsing in sequence, their massive frames buckling like paper. The narration fields were glowing too bright, unstable. He could taste metal in the air, bitter and wrong. People were running in every direction, miners, guards, slaves still wearing their collars. The sirens blended into the screams. Kale pushed through the crowd toward the shaft entrances. The ground trembled beneath his feet. He heard the words, "Level 12 collapse," over the loudspeakers, and his stomach turned cold. That was where Lyra's crew worked. He ran faster. His lungs ached from the smoke, but he didn't stop. He reached the fence perimeter and ducked under it before the guards could react. A hand grabbed his shoulder, he twisted, breaking free, sprinting toward the main tunnel. The air inside was worse. Dust clouds and sparks rained from the ceiling. The lights flickered out completely, replaced by the faint blue glow of exposed neuralium veins. He stumbled through the darkness, calling her name. Lyra. Lyra. His voice echoed back at him, swallowed by the tunnel. Somewhere ahead, a beam of light cut through the dust, a search drone, its scanner sweeping the wreckage. He stayed low, crawling over twisted metal and broken tools. The floor vibrated with distant detonations, the whole mountain was groaning. He found the collapsed section where the tunnel had caved in. The walls had folded inward, sealing everything beyond it under tons of stone. A guard was shouting orders nearby, his voice filtered through a mask. Get the Ilari crew out. Priority to navigators. Kale's heart pounded. He scrambled toward the rubble, pulling at rocks and twisted girders with bleeding hands. He didn't care about the guards yelling at him to stop. He clawed at the stones, calling her name again and again. Lyra. It's me. I'm here. The guard yanked him back roughly. You stupid rat. You'll get yourself killed. Kale drove his elbow back and broke free, diving toward the pile again. This time he heard something, faint, soft, a voice through the dust. He froze. Kale. He spun, searching for the sound. Through a gap between two collapsed supports, he saw a flicker of blue light. He shoved his arm into the hole, reaching. Something small and trembling grasped his fingers. Lyra. Hold on. He pulled, but the debris wouldn't move. He could see her face now through the crack, streaked with soot, eyes dim with exhaustion. The collar around her neck was sparking, half broken, smoking faintly. They won't let me go, she whispered weakly. They'll find me. Forget them, he shouted, digging harder. I promised, remember. I'll get you out. Her fingers tightened on his. Then the sound of metal groaning above them cut through everything. The guard screamed something, the supports giving way. And Kale barely had time to react. He lunged backward as the tunnel ceiling collapsed entirely, the shockwave throwing him to the ground. When the dust cleared, the gap was gone. Just a wall of crushed stone. He scrambled forward again, pounding at the rocks until his hands bled, calling her name until his voice cracked. There was no answer. Only silence and a faint hum of neuralium veins fading into darkness. Someone grabbed him from behind and dragged him away. He struggled, but his limbs were shaking too badly to fight. He barely heard the man yelling over the sirens. She's gone, kid. The whole level's gone. You'll die if you stay. Kale stopped fighting. He turned once, staring at the collapsed tunnel, dust swirling like ghosts where she'd been. He thought he saw the faintest shimmer of light deep inside, like her glow trying to reach him, then it vanished completely. They hauled him back to the surface as the ground buckled. The entire sector collapsed behind them, a thunderous wave of sound and dust swallowing everything. The sky was a haze of fire and smoke. By the time the alarms stopped, dawn had come, if it could be called dawn on Tarsus 9. The red sun barely cut through the ash clouds. Kale sat in the dirt near the fence, staring at the smoking ruins of the mine. His clothes were torn, his hands raw. People moved around him, but he didn't see them. A woman from the medical crew stopped beside him, checking his vitals. Any family? She asked softly. He shook his head. His adoptive guardians had worked the same level that night. The same one that buried Lyra. The woman put a tag around his wrist, unaccompanied minor, and moved on. Kale stayed there long after everyone else left. The ash drifted down like snow, settling on his hair and shoulders. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the little piece of dull metal he'd kept since that night in the tunnels, a broken ration bar wrapper, the corner she hadn't finished eating. It was nothing. But it was all he had left of her. He closed his hand around it and looked back at the mine one last time. The wind howled through the wreckage, and in it he thought he heard her voice again, soft, distant, calling his name. He didn't cry. There wasn't anything left in him to cry with. He just whispered into the wind, "I'll still find you." And for the first time, the words sounded less like a promise and more like a vow carved into stone. Years later, when the smoke of Tarsus faded and the consortium rebuilt the mines, some said they still heard voices in the collapsed tunnels, echoes of children, of ghosts, of promises that refused to die. But Kale was long gone by then, and the only thing that remained of that night was the legend of a boy who swore to the stars that he would keep his word, no matter what it cost him. The night sky above Tarsus 9 had changed little in the years since the collapse, still the same pale red haze, still the same artificial glow from the mining towers that never slept. But to Kale Ren, it was no longer home. It was a cage he'd learned to move through without chains. He crouched behind a broken generator on the outskirts of the freight yard, watching the loading droids move in their rigid, perfect rhythm. Each crate bore the sigil of the Tarsus Consortium, a silver serpent coiled around a star. The symbol was burned into his memory, the same one branded on the slave collars, the same one carved into the tunnel walls where Lyra had died. 2 minutes, came a voice through his comm, "Security sweep passes in 2. Kale pressed his palm to the side of his neck, activating the implant. "Copy. I see them." He counted the steps of the patrol, then moved. Quick, quiet, just another shadow in the dark. His boots hit the metal deck without sound. The air smelled of oil and ozone. He reached the back of the transport truck and popped the seal. Inside were stacked containers marked for off-world export. He pried one open, revealing what they were after: ration packs, medical supplies, and, most valuable, reactor fuel cells. The chainbreakers would trade those for food, weapons, and passage for escaped workers. He slung the first crate down to the woman waiting below. Mira Koss, his commander, his mentor, and the closest thing to family he had left. Half her face was replaced with alloy plating, one eye glowing faintly red. "Make it quick, kid," she muttered. "We've got maybe 5 before the drones cycle back." "I'm not a kid anymore," Kale said, dropping another crate. "Could have fooled me." They worked in silence, efficient and practiced. The chainbreakers had grown from scattered workers into a real resistance now. Kale had been one of the first to join, years ago, when he still believed rebellion could fix something. Now it was just survival dressed up as purpose. The last crate hit the dirt. Mira motioned to pull out, but Kale froze. He heard something, faint, high-pitched, not mechanical. A whisper through static. He glanced toward the far end of the yard. A figure stood on top of one of the cargo towers, silhouetted against the red sky. Too far to make out, but something about the posture, calm, still, watching. The wind caught a shimmer of silver hair. Kale's heart stuttered. No. It couldn't be. "Kale," Mira hissed. "Move." He blinked, and the figure was gone. The tower was empty again. He shook himself, grabbed the final crate, and jumped down. The truck's engines were already starting their pre-launch sequence. They slipped into the shadows of the junkyard as the first patrol drones whirred past. Once they were far enough, Mira punched the crate with her cybernetic hand, popping it open. The blue light from the fuel cells glowed across her metal features. Beautiful. Enough juice to power the underground clinic for months. Kale nodded, still distracted. The image of the figure on the tower burned in his mind. "You're somewhere else," Mira said. He didn't answer. She sighed. "You're thinking about her again." Kale's jaw tightened. "Drop it. You can't keep chasing ghosts, Ren. The Ilari girl's dead. The whole sector went under. You saw it. He said nothing. The memory of that night still clawed at him when he closed his eyes, the way her voice had sounded through the dust, the way her hand had slipped from his. Mira leaned back against the crate. You want something to fight for, fine. Fight for the ones still breathing. Kale stared at the horizon where the towers burned. I am. Before she could reply, their comms crackled. Command to Team 3. You need to see this. Broadcast from the upper mines. Mira tapped her implant. Go ahead. Static filled the line, then a shaky video feed came through. It showed a consortium facility engulfed in blue fire. Dozens of guards lay unconscious, or dead. The walls were scorched in strange patterns, like veins of lightning had torn through solid steel. A voice on the feed said, "They're calling her the Phantom." Struck out of nowhere. Didn't take anything, didn't kill anyone who wasn't armed. Just, walked through the walls. Kale felt his pulse spike. That shimmer, that light. He knew it. Mira frowned. Another ghost story. Probably rebels with stolen tech. No, Kale whispered. She glanced at him. What? He replayed the feed, slowing it down. For a split second, a figure moved through the smoke, tall, graceful, silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. Her eyes reflected light like liquid metal. Kale swallowed hard. It's her. Mira barked a short, humorless laugh. You really think? I know what I saw. She shook her head. Even if it was her, she's not the same, Kale. Nobody comes out of the consortium's labs the same. He stared at the fading image on the screen. Lyra, if it was her, hadn't died in the collapse. She'd become something else, something powerful enough to turn the Empire's own tech against it. Mira snapped the feed off. We've got a delivery to make. You can chase ghosts after that. Kale followed in silence as they loaded the crates onto the hover truck and drove into the wastelands beyond the colony. The wind tore across the plains, carrying with it the sound of the mining towers, an endless metallic heartbeat. He leaned back against the cold metal of the truck bed, eyes on the stars overhead. Somewhere beyond that dust, she was alive. Changed, maybe. Dangerous, probably. But alive. For years, the promise had been nothing more than a memory he whispered to himself to survive. Now it was a direction again. He closed his eyes and said it once more, quietly, into the roar of the engines. I'm coming, Lyra. Mira heard him but didn't comment. She'd seen that look before, the kind that turned men into martyrs. Far behind them, the burning facility flickered one last time before collapsing into darkness. And high above the colony, on a ruined tower half swallowed by dust storms, the figure with silver hair watched their transport fade into the night, eyes glowing faintly as she whispered a name she hadn't spoken in years. The ambush came without warning. 1 second the desert was silent but for the hum of the hover truck's engines, and the next the horizon split open with the flash of plasma fire. Kale barely had time to shout before the shockwave flipped the vehicle on its side. The world turned over in a blur of dust and sound. He hit metal, rolled, and came to rest in the sand, ears ringing. Mira was already up, weapon drawn, her red cybernetic eye glowing through the haze. Consortium patrol. Move. Kale crawled out from the wreckage, coughing. Drones swarmed overhead, sleek, black, shaped like predatory insects. The patrol transport appeared behind them, spotlights slicing through the night. He ducked behind the overturned truck and returned fire with his pulse rifle. The bolts cut through 2 drones, but 3 more replaced them instantly. Mira barked orders through the comm, form a line. Cover the crates. We can't let them take the fuel. Her voice cut off as a plasma round hit the ground beside her, sending sand and metal flying. Kale dove for cover, feeling the heat singe the back of his neck. He looked toward the convoy, half their team was already down, pinned behind rocks. The patrol soldiers advanced in formation, armor gleaming silver in the headlights. He was about to reload when the sky changed color. A deep, electric blue shimmer rippled across the air, like heat mirage twisting space itself. The drones faltered mid-flight, their systems flickering. The patrol soldiers stopped, confused, as their visors glitched. Then the light descended. It wasn't a beam or an explosion, it was like a presence, silent and cold, moving through the battlefield. The first soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, his rifle bent in his hands, metal groaning like it was made of clay. The next fell to his knees, clutching his head, screaming. Cale shielded his eyes against the glare. The air around them vibrated with energy, fine dust lifting off the ground as though gravity itself had forgotten its job. And through the storm, a figure stepped forward. Tall. Lithe. Eyes glowing like molten silver. Cale's heart stopped. She moved without sound, without effort. The drones fell one by one, their circuits frying midair. Plasma bolts fired at her bent away, curving harmlessly into the sand. The soldiers tried to retreat, but their comms failed. One dropped his weapon and ran, only to collapse as his neural implant sparked violently. Within seconds, it was over. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal. Cale rose slowly from behind the wreckage, disbelief tightening in his chest. The figure stood in the center of the wrecked convoy, her silver hair lifting slightly in the static-charged air. He took a hesitant step forward. Lyra? The word felt strange on his tongue after so many years, almost fragile. She turned. The light from her skin dimmed, revealing a face he half remembered, reshaped by time. Older now, sharper, but still her, the same luminous veins beneath translucent skin, the same eyes that saw through him instead of at him. Cale, she said softly, and his name carried the same quiet tone it had in the tunnels years ago. He froze. The years between them vanished all at once. I thought you were dead, he managed. I was, she said. In a way. Her gaze swept the smoking battlefield. You shouldn't be here. He almost laughed. You save us, and that's what you say. She walked toward him, her movements deliberate, almost cautious. They were following you. The consortium hunts the chainbreakers now. You've grown reckless. I could say the same. He gestured at the wreckage. What the hell was that? Lyra glanced at her hand, flexing her fingers as faint light pulsed beneath the skin. A mistake. One I can't unmake. Mira limped up behind Cale, gun still raised. She's the Phantom, she said flatly. The one who hit the outpost. Lyra's expression didn't change. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be gone. Comforting, Mira muttered. Cale stepped between them. She's not our enemy. Mira glared. You don't know what she is. I know who she is. Lyra's gaze flickered toward him, something unreadable behind her calm. You shouldn't. Cale frowned. What happened to you, Lyra? The labs, the experiments, what did they do? She hesitated. They broke the Ilari the way they broke this world. I escaped, but not alone. Others like me, altered, weaponized. The consortium made us into something they couldn't control. And now? I'm here to finish what they started. Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. To end it, before they spread the augment code beyond this planet. Cale glanced at Mira. You hear that? She's fighting the same enemy we are. Or leading us into a trap, Mira shot back. Lyra looked past them, toward the horizon where the mining towers glowed faintly red. There's a transport hub beneath the main refinery. That's where they store the augment cores, the data, the blueprints, everything. I have to reach it before they move it off-world. You want our help. I want your access, she said simply. You know the tunnels better than anyone. Help me get in, and I'll destroy it all. Kale studied her. The girl he'd once known was still there somewhere beneath the steel and light, but buried deep. And if I say no? Her expression didn't change, but the air around her seemed to thrum again. Then they'll win. And when they do, there won't be any more humans or Ilari, just machines wearing our faces. Mira cursed under her breath. She's insane. Kale shook his head. No. She's desperate. Lyra turned away, the faint glow fading from her skin. Choose fast. The patrols will regroup soon. She started walking into the wasteland, her silhouette vanishing into the red dust. Kale hesitated only a moment before following. Mira grabbed his arm. You're going to regret this. Maybe, he said. But I made her a promise. Kid, you were 12. He looked back at her, eyes hard. Promises don't have an expiration date. He pulled free and ran after Lyra, the wind tearing past him. She didn't turn when he caught up, but he saw the faintest flicker of light along her jaw, like a smile trying to find its way through the years. Behind them, the burning wreckage faded into silence, swallowed by the endless desert. Ahead lay the mines of Tarsus 9, where old ghosts waited to wake. The tunnels beneath the refinery were nothing like Kale remembered. When he'd worked here as a boy, they'd been damp and rusted, filled with the smell of oil and sweat, echoing with the clang of pickaxes and the distant hum of machinery. Now they pulsed with power, cables glowing faintly blue along the walls, the ground trembling under the weight of generators buried deeper still. The consortium had rebuilt everything, turned the mines into something more alive, and more dangerous. Lyra led them wordlessly through the shadows, her movements fluid, every step precise. She seemed to see in the dark, her eyes adjusting to the faintest flicker of light. Kale followed close, his rifle raised, Mira behind them, muttering quietly into her comm as she looped their trail through false signals. Motion sensors ahead, Mira whispered. 2, maybe 3. I see them, Lyra replied softly. She lifted her hand, blue light rippled across her palm, and the air shimmered. The sensors flickered, went dead. Kale stared. You're using consortium tech. Her gaze flicked toward him briefly. No. I am consortium tech. The words hung in the air between them. Kale had no answer. They pressed deeper into the tunnels, passing old freight lifts sealed with heavy locks, walls marked with faded warnings in multiple languages. Somewhere far above, the refinery's machinery roared, the sound like a mechanical heartbeat. They reached a service corridor, narrow, lined with humming conduits. Mira crouched by a terminal, tapping quickly. If I can spoof the guard rotation, we'll have 10 minutes inside the hub before anyone notices. Lyra nodded. Make it 5. They'll scan the system faster than you think. Kale leaned against the wall, studying her. The faint glow beneath her skin flickered whenever she was near the live wiring, responding like static. She wasn't entirely human anymore, he knew that, but seeing it up close made it real in a way words hadn't. What happens when we reach the core? He asked quietly. We destroy it, she said. How? Lyra turned to him, eyes silver bright in the dark. You don't need to know how. That's not good enough. I need to know what I'm helping you do. Her jaw tightened. If I tell you, you'll try to stop me. Mira glanced up from the console. That's reassuring. Lyra ignored her. When I trigger the overload, it will wipe everything, the cores, the data, the augment seed. But it won't stop there. The power conduits will cascade. The refinery will collapse. Kale frowned. You're talking about killing everyone inside. Everyone here is part of the system. Engineers, soldiers, overseers, they keep it running. If it survives, the augment code spreads. You don't stop a virus by sparing the host. Those aren't hosts, he said, anger rising in his throat. They're people. So were we, she said softly. Silence filled the corridor, heavy as the air itself. Mira broke it first. Done. Doors unlocked, patrol path diverted. Let's move before the system catches the loop. They advanced quickly, slipping through the bulkhead into a larger chamber. The hum of machinery grew louder. Rows of tall, glass-like tanks filled the space, each glowing faintly. Inside floated shapes, humanoid, unfinished, their veins lit with the same pale blue light as Lyra's skin. Kale stopped cold. What are those? Lyra's voice was quiet. Prototypes. The next generation. They're alive. Their property. He stepped closer to one of the tanks, staring at the half-formed body within. It looked almost peaceful, suspended in liquid, eyes closed. But the longer he looked, the more wrong it seemed, the skin too smooth, the limbs slightly too long. Mira swallowed hard. This is sick. This is the future, Lyra said. Unless we stop it. They moved past the tanks toward the central platform where a circular terminal pulsed with light. Lyra placed her hand against it, and the lights reacted instantly, threads of data racing across the floor and walls. Symbols appeared in the air, spinning lines of alien code. She closed her eyes, whispering something under her breath. Kale stepped forward. Lyra, wait. The lights flared. Alarms screamed. Mira swore. They found us. Armed drones poured from hidden alcoves above, weapons spinning. Kale fired instinctively, his pulse rifle tearing through the first wave. Mira ducked behind a tank, returning fire, but there were too many. Lyra didn't move. The air around her shimmered as she pulled energy into herself, veins blazing with blue light. The drones faltered midair, their circuits frying under invisible pressure. But for every one that fell, another took its place. Kale ducked behind a column beside her. You said 10 minutes. They adjusted faster. Her voice trembled slightly now, strained. Keep them off me. He reloaded and fired again. The sound was deafening, flashes of light cutting through the haze of smoke. Mira shouted something, but it was lost to the roar of battle. Then the platform beneath Lyra began to shake. The holographic code spiraled upward, wrapping around her like ribbons of fire. Her skin blazed bright silver. Lyra! Kale shouted. Stop! You'll. The floor split open, sending him tumbling back. Energy surged through the chamber, crackling through the air. One by one, the tanks shattered, spilling their contents in a wave of liquid and broken glass. The prototypes within gasped like newborns, confused and terrified. Lyra fell to her knees, clutching her head as light poured from her eyes. I can't contain it, she whispered. It's too deep, it's part of me now. Kale grabbed her shoulders. Then shut it down. She looked up at him, eyes blazing. You don't understand. If I stop it, it spreads. If I finish it, it ends with me. He shook his head, desperate. There has to be another way. There isn't. For a moment, everything froze, the alarms, the lights, even the air itself. Lyra's hand rose, trembling, and touched his face. The glow softened. You kept your promise, she said quietly. That's enough. Then the energy flared again, consuming the room in blinding white. When Kale opened his eyes, the world was smoke and silence. The drones were gone, the tanks destroyed. Mira coughed somewhere nearby, pulling herself out from under debris. Lyra was gone. Only the faint hum of cooling circuits remained, and the echo of her voice in the back of his mind, like the whisper of static over a dead signal. The wind howled across the wastes, carrying ash and the faint tang of ozone. The refinery was a black scar on the horizon, half collapsed, smoke curling upward like morning ribbons. Kale trudged through the debris with slow, heavy steps, his boots sinking into the sand that glittered faintly with melted glass. The explosion had ripped through everything, metal, concrete, even the air itself, and left behind a silence that felt unnatural. Mira limped beside him, her arm in a makeshift sling. She hadn't spoken much since the blast, and he hadn't asked her to. Every few minutes, the wind shifted, and he'd catch glimpses of what was left of the facility, twisted girders, blackened machinery, the faint blue glow of burnt circuits dying out one by one. "She's gone," Mira said finally. Her voice was hoarse. "You saw it, Kale. No one survives that." He didn't answer. His eyes scanned the wreckage again, searching for something, anything, that proved her wrong. "You need to accept it," she said. "The refinery's a grave." Kale stared at the horizon where the towers burned. "I am." Before she could reply, their comms crackled. "Command to Team 3. You need to see this. Broadcast from the upper mines." Mira tapped her implant. "Go ahead." Static filled the line, then a shaky video feed came through. It showed a consortium facility engulfed in blue fire. Dozens of guards lay unconscious, or dead. The walls were scorched in strange patterns, like veins of lightning had torn through solid steel. A voice on the feed said, "They're calling her the Phantom. Struck out of nowhere. Didn't take anything, didn't kill anyone who wasn't armed. Just walked through the walls." Kale felt his pulse spike. That shimmer, that light. He knew it. Mira frowned. Another ghost story. Probably rebels with stolen tech. "No," Kale whispered. She glanced at him. "What?" He replayed the feed, slowing it down. For a split second, a figure moved through the smoke, tall, graceful, silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. Her eyes reflected light like liquid metal. Kale swallowed hard. "It's her." Mira barked a short, humorless laugh. "You really think? I know what I saw." She shook her head. "Even if it was her, she's not the same, Kale. Nobody comes out of the consortium's labs the same." He stared at the fading image on the screen. Lyra, if it was her, hadn't died in the collapse. She'd become something else, something powerful enough to turn the Empire's own tech against it. Mira snapped the feed off. "We've got a delivery to make. You can chase ghosts after that." Kale followed in silence as they loaded the crates onto the hover truck and drove into the wastelands beyond the colony. The wind tore across the plains, carrying with it the sound of the mining towers, an endless metallic heartbeat. He leaned back against the cold metal of the truck bed, eyes on the stars overhead. Somewhere beyond that dust, she was alive. Changed, maybe. Dangerous, probably. But alive. For years, the promise had been nothing more than a memory he whispered to himself to survive. Now it was a direction again. He closed his eyes and said it once more, quietly, into the roar of the engines. "I'm coming, Lyra." Mira heard him but didn't comment. She'd seen that look before, the kind that turned men into martyrs. Far behind them, the burning facility flickered one last time before collapsing into darkness. And high above the colony, on a ruined tower half swallowed by dust storms, the figure with silver hair watched their transport fade into the night, eyes glowing faintly as she whispered a name she hadn't spoken in years. The ambush came without warning. 1 second the desert was silent but for the hum of the hovertruck's engines, and the next the horizon split open with the flash of plasma fire. Kale barely had time to shout before the shockwave flipped the vehicle on its side. The world turned over in a blur of dust and sound. He hit metal, rolled, and came to rest in the sand, ears ringing. Mira was already up, weapon drawn, her red cybernetic eye glowing through the haze. Consortium patrol. Move. Kale crawled out from the wreckage, coughing. Drones swarmed overhead, sleek, black, shaped like predatory insects. The patrol transport appeared behind them, spotlights slicing through the night. He ducked behind the overturned truck and returned fire with his pulse rifle. The bolts cut through 2 drones, but 3 more replaced them instantly. Mira barked orders through the comm, form a line. Cover the crates. We can't let them take the fuel. Kale froze. Lyra? She looked up. Her face was pale, streaked with soot, the left side scorched where metal met flesh. Her eyes still glowed, but weaker now, flickering, unstable. Kale, she said softly, her voice raw. You shouldn't have come. He crossed the distance in seconds, kneeling beside her. You're hurt. She smiled faintly. I told you it would end with me. I was wrong. What happened? They rebuilt faster than I thought. The network learned from me. I shut down the core, but it copied itself, spread across the relays before I could stop it. You mean the augment code? She nodded weakly. It's adapting. Not just machines this time. It's reaching into the data web. The human implants, the comm grids. They're already infected. Mira swore. Then we're all screwed. Lyra's gaze met Kale's. Unless we finish it. Together. He swallowed hard. You can't even stand. I don't need to. She reached into her cloak, pulling out a small, transparent shard, its surface rippling with faint light. This is a control key. It can shut down the network. But it needs a human neural link to stabilize. Kale understood immediately. You mean me. It won't kill you, she said, though her voice betrayed doubt. Probably. Mira stepped forward. You're not doing this. It's suicide. Kale didn't look away from Lyra. If this thing spreads, it won't matter. No one will be left to remember us anyway. Lyra reached up, fingers brushing his wrist. You always had to play the hero. He smiled faintly. No. I just keep my promises. The wind rose, scattering sand across the cliffs. Far below, the faint hum of the relays grew louder, like a heartbeat waking in the earth. Kale took the shard, feeling its energy spark against his skin. Lyra closed her eyes. Once you connect, don't let go. No matter what it shows you. He nodded, slid the shard against the neural port at his temple, and the world dissolved into light. He fell through a storm of memories that weren't his. The neural shard burned against his temple, and the world around him unfolded like a cracked mirror, each fragment showing something different, a memory, a life, a voice. He saw the mining colony, the screaming of children in the dust. He saw Lyra chained to a wall, her eyes bright even when everything else had gone dim. Then the scenes shifted, metal tables, cold lights, hands opening her skull to place circuits where thoughts used to live. He tried to pull away, but the shard held him. The network wasn't a machine anymore. It was alive, built from the thoughts of the dead, from the echoes of everyone who'd ever been touched by the consortium's experiments. Their pain had become code, there was a kind of gravity pulling him deeper. He reached for something solid and found her. Lyra stood beside him in the lightless space, her form flickering between human and something brighter. Her voice wasn't sound but vibration, a resonance that pulsed through his chest. This is the core, she said. It's not in one place anymore. It's everywhere. He looked around. The air shimmered with lines of code that looked like constellations, data streams glowing like rivers. But beneath the beauty was something darker, a pulse that felt wrong, like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Where do we start? He asked. Lyra turned, and suddenly they were standing inside a memory that wasn't theirs. A massive data structure loomed before them, a perfect sphere of shifting light. Within it, shadows moved, faces of people, half-formed and distorted, whispering words too fast to understand. That's it, she said. The seed. He could feel it watching them. How do we destroy it? We don't destroy it, Lyra said. We override it. She stepped forward, and light flared around her. Symbols streamed from her hands, embedding themselves into the surface of the sphere. The whispers turned into screams. The sphere rippled, fracturing. Cale felt a wave of pressure slam through him. Every thought he'd ever had reflected back at once, amplified, dissected, then copied. The network was scanning him, trying to understand, trying to be him. Lyra's voice echoed faintly, "It's resisting. It knows what we're doing." Then hit it harder. She smiled faintly. "You always say that." Together they pressed forward. The light surged, tearing at their forms, memories flickering around them like sparks, Cale as a boy in the mines, Lyra whispering in the dark cell, his promise to her, her hand reaching through the bars. Every moment of their lives folded into the code, feeding the system. And then the whispers changed. They weren't random anymore. They were hers. Cale turned. Lyra's body shimmered, the light inside her pulsing erratically. "It's reading me," she said, pain twisting her expression. "It's using me to stabilize itself. Then disconnect. I can't. I am the connection." He reached for her, but the distance between them stretched like elastic, the space itself warping. The core was pulling her in. "Cale," she shouted, her voice cracking. "If it takes me, it wins. You have to finish it. Tell me how." "Think of me," she whispered, and then she was gone. The light collapsed inward, and Cale stood alone before the core. The whispers grew louder, overlapping voices of thousands, human and alien, male and female, all speaking in perfect sync. "We are the future. We are the evolution. We are what comes next." He clenched his fists. "No. You're what ends." He reached into himself, searching for the connection, the link Lyra had forged between their minds. It was still there, faint and fragile, like a single thread of light. He grabbed it and pulled. The core screamed. Energy flooded through him, memories burning across his mind like fire. He saw everything Lyra had seen, the labs, the experiments, the faces of those who had died for progress. He saw her escape, the first time she'd killed to live, the moment she realized what she'd become. And beneath it all, he felt her heart, her quiet, endless longing for the promise he'd made in the dirt all those years ago. He focused on that. On her laughter, her eyes, the sound of her voice saying his name. The core twisted, destabilizing. Its surface cracked, light bleeding out in jagged lines. The network roared in fury. "You cannot unmake what has evolved." Cale's grip tightened. "Watch me." He poured everything into the link, his anger, his memories, his love. The connection burned white-hot, consuming both him and the shard. The core convulsed, collapsing inward. The voices turned to static, then silence. When the light finally dimmed, Cale was on his knees in the ruins of the old relay tower. The sun was setting, staining the horizon crimson. The shard lay in the dust beside him, cracked and lifeless. Myra's voice came faintly through the calm, distorted. "Cale. You still breathing?" He opened his eyes. The neural port behind his ear sparked, a wisp of smoke rising. His body felt like lead, but he was alive. "I'm here," he managed. "The relays just went dark," she said. "All of them. Whatever you did, it worked." He looked at the shard, then to the horizon where the last of the blue light was fading. "No," he whispered. "We did." The wind carried a faint echo, so soft he almost thought he imagined it, a voice like static through an old transmitter, saying his name the way only she did. He closed his eyes and let it wash over him. For the first time in years, the sky above Tarsus 9 was dark. No flickering towers, no hum of machinery. Just silence, and the stars she had always wanted to see free. The storm came 3 days after the network died. The planet had gone eerily quiet, the usual hum of orbiting drones gone, the air traffic silent. The refinery fields were still burning in places, blue flames flickering where plasma conduits had ruptured. Kale and Mira had moved north, toward the ridge outposts where the chainbreakers once hid their supplies. Most of the caches were gone, looted, buried, or turned to ash. Food was running low. So was hope. The nights were worse. Every time Kale closed his eyes, he heard her voice, not words, just presence, like a signal trying to reach through static. He couldn't tell if it was memory or something left behind. The neural ports still sparked sometimes, tiny bursts of heat under the skin. Mira noticed. "You're still linked," she said one morning, watching him flinch as the spark caught again. "Whatever she left in your head, it's not gone." "She's not gone," he said quietly. "You don't know that. She saved this world. That kind of thing leaves a mark." Mira scowled, tightening the strap on her pack. "Or a scar. There's a difference." They reached the ridge before midday. Below them, the desert stretched for miles, broken only by the wreckage of old transports and the half-buried towers of the mining complexes. The sky was heavy with clouds, unusual for Tarsus 9. Static lightning flickered within them, glowing blue against the dark. Mira adjusted her scope. "That's not weather." Kale took the lens from her and focused. The light wasn't random, it pulsed in intervals, rhythmic, deliberate. A signal. "She's calling," he murmured. Mira groaned. "Or something's pretending to be her." He lowered the scope, jaw tight. "It's coming from the equatorial array. If there's anything left of her, it'll be there." "Kale, the array's half-buried and unstable. You go there, you're not coming back." He turned, the wind catching his coat. "I can't ignore it." Mira studied him for a long time, then sighed. "You're impossible. I learn from the best." She smirked faintly. "That's not a compliment." They traveled through the night. The desert glowed faintly under the storm's light, shadows stretching long across the sand. The air grew colder as they neared the equator, and the ground turned metallic, littered with shards of what had once been satellites. The closer they got, the stronger the pulse became, a low hum that vibrated in Kale's bones. When they finally reached the array, it looked less like a structure and more like a graveyard. The towers leaned at odd angles, their panels cracked, the ground split open by old impacts. But in the center, buried halfway beneath the sand, a faint blue light pulsed steadily. Mira raised her weapon. "If this is a trap." "I'll know," Kale said. He stepped forward, boots crunching on glassy ground. The light brightened as he approached, spreading through the cracks in the sand. It wasn't mechanical, it was organic, almost breathing. He knelt beside the source. A small sphere sat half buried in the dust, smooth and translucent. The same faint energy shimmered inside, identical to the glow that had once run beneath Lyra's skin. He touched it. The world shifted. For a heartbeat, everything froze, the wind, the storm, even sound itself. Then light poured from the sphere, forming a shape in the air before him. A figure. Lyra. Not as he'd last seen her, burned and broken, but whole. Her hair floated like silver flame, her eyes soft but distant, flickering like data. "Kale," she said, her voice both everywhere and nowhere. He couldn't move. "You, how?" "This isn't me," she said gently. "It's what I left behind. The part of me that remembered you." He swallowed hard. "I thought I lost you." "You did." She smiled faintly. "But not everything has to stay lost." He reached for her, but his hand passed through light. The projection shimmered. "The network's gone," she continued. "But fragments remain. Not the corruption, the memory. The pieces of what we were. They'll fade, but before they do, they can rebuild." "Rebuild what?" "Freedom," she said simply. "For what's left of us. For every Ilari mind still trapped in the data. He shook his head. I can't do that alone. You won't. The light behind her shifted, forming the faint outlines of other shapes, faint silhouettes, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, flickering like candle flames. The echoes of the Ilari. They're waiting, she said. And they need a voice. A guide. You can help them find bodies again. Lives again. He took a shaky breath. You're asking me to become the thing we fought. I'm asking you to finish what we started. Her expression softened. You once said love could survive anything. Prove it. Lightning cracked across the sky, lighting the wreckage in blue fire. Kale's eyes burned. If I do this, I won't be human anymore. Neither was I, she whispered. The wind roared. The sphere pulsed once, and her image flickered, growing dimmer. Wait, he said, panic rising. Don't go. She smiled, a small, tired smile. You kept your promise. That's all I ever wanted. The light shattered. Kale fell to his knees, sand pouring through his fingers. The sphere was still there, faintly glowing. Mira approached slowly, watching the tears streak his dust-covered face. She's really gone this time, Mira said softly. He shook his head. No. Not gone. Just, changing. He lifted the sphere, feeling it vibrate faintly in his palm. The pulse matched his heartbeat. For the first time since the war began, he didn't feel alone. Mira looked at him like she wanted to argue, then stopped. So what now? Kale stared at the horizon, where the storm was breaking, shafts of sunlight piercing through the clouds. Now, he said quietly, we start again. And as the wind rose, carrying the last embers of the old world into the sky, the faint blue light of the sphere pulsed once, steady, alive, like the echo of a promise still kept. The light from the sphere spread like dawn, climbing the walls of the ruined array and seeping into the fractures of the ancient metal. Kale stood motionless, watching as threads of blue energy ran outward in every direction. Lines of code, veins of memory awakening after centuries of silence. The wind carried the low hum of it, almost like a heartbeat. Mira took a step back, shielding her eyes as the pulse intensified. Kale, what the hell is happening? He didn't answer. The pulse had synced fully with his own heart now, every beat echoing in the sand beneath his boots. The neural port at his neck burned hot, then cool, then something between the two, a sensation that wasn't pain, but awareness. The sphere floated from his hand, hovering in front of him. He reached toward it, and the light swallowed him whole. He saw the galaxy unfold. Not through eyes, but through something larger. Star systems blooming like flowers, countless nodes of life and thought pulsing across the dark. He felt the hum of the Ilari, billions once, now a faint, flickering web of survivors, drifting within fragments of corrupted code scattered through dead networks. They were ghosts in the machine, waiting. Guide them, her voice whispered, distant but clear. He reached out with a thought, and the fragments responded. The pulse grew louder, the patterns rearranging themselves, finding each other. Mira shouted something behind him, but her voice was distant, drowned beneath the sound of creation itself. The light rose until it was all he could see. For a moment, Kale wasn't human anymore. He was something woven between flesh and data, between love and loss, between what was and what might be. When he opened his eyes, the storm had passed. The air was still, the sky a washed-out silver. The sphere hovered before him, now dimmer, its glow steady but faint. The ground around the array had changed, metal veins ran through the sand, glimmering faintly with the same soft light, stretching for miles like new roots. Mira approached carefully, gun lowered. Are you still you? Kale turned toward her. His voice was quiet but sure. I think so. You were gone for minutes. Maybe hours. The light, it covered everything. She glanced around. What did you do? He looked down at his hands. Faint traces of blue ran beneath his skin, flickering like veins of energy. I opened the gate. To what? To them. He nodded toward the horizon. In the distance, faint pillars of light rose from the ground, one, then three, then dozens. The signal spreading. The Ilari awakening. Myra's eyes widened. You just unleashed an entire species of digital gods back into the galaxy. Not gods, he said softly. People. Broken, lost, scared. Just like us. She exhaled, rubbing her temples. You're insane. Maybe, he admitted. But if they rebuild, if they remember who they were, maybe this time it won't end in chains. The light above them shifted again. The clouds parted, revealing the orbital ring far overhead, shattered but faintly alive with new power. The remnants of the Ilari network were reassembling, linking to the signal Kale had awoken. He could feel them now, whispers at the edge of his mind. Gratitude. Curiosity. Hope. One whisper stood apart, soft, familiar. You kept your promise. He closed his eyes. Always. Mira stared at him, then at the rising lights, her voice quiet. So what now? The corporations will come for this. They'll never let it stand. They'll try, he said, the faintest smile on his lips. But they'll be too late. The Ilari won't be slaves again. And you? He looked down at his hands, the light still flickering faintly under the skin. I'm part of this now. I can feel what they feel. See what they see. I can help them find bodies again, new forms, new lives. Mira tilted her head. You're talking about rebuilding them in human space. That's suicide. Maybe, he said, turning toward the horizon. But maybe it's the only way forward. No more masters, no more chains. Just people rebuilding what was taken from them. The ground trembled softly as the nearest pillar of light rose higher, a column of pure blue stretching into the sky. Within it, faint silhouettes moved, half-formed figures, memories taking shape. Mira took an involuntary step back, awe and fear blending in her eyes. They're beautiful, she whispered. Kale nodded. They always were. The light spread farther now, racing across the desert. The ruins began to hum with resonance, the air vibrating with the pulse of something immense and alive. Kale felt the last of his fear burn away, replaced by a strange calm. This is what she wanted, he murmured. Not revenge. Not power. Just freedom. And what about you? He looked at her, eyes faintly glowing. I made a promise. I keep it. The light around them intensified, washing everything in blue-white brilliance. The wind howled again, but it no longer felt cold. In the distance, the ruins of the mining colonies lit up one by one, their broken towers becoming beacons in the night. The galaxy itself seemed to breathe. Mira lowered her weapon completely. Guess there's no going back now. Kale smiled faintly. There never was. He took one last look at the sphere as it dimmed in his palm, the faint pulse still steady, alive. Somewhere within that light, he thought he saw her face again, just for a heartbeat, smiling, proud. He turned toward the horizon and started walking, the glow following in his wake. The desert shimmered with new life, the ruins humming with the birth of something greater than either species had ever known. Above them, the stars burned brighter. And in the silence that followed, the galaxy began to dream again. Years passed. The scars of war faded beneath new growth, and the desert of Tarsus 9 turned strange and green. Metallic roots coiled beneath the surface, channeling light and water from old conduits, feeding forests where nothing had grown before. The sky was still bruised with the remnants of the storm, but it no longer burned with fire, only with dawn. Travelers came and went through the ruins now, whispering about the awakening world, where machines dreamed and ghosts learned to breathe again. Kale stood on a cliff overlooking what had once been a mining pit. Now it was a valley of glass and light, a city forming itself from the old bones of empire. Towers rose, smooth and curved, their walls alive with soft luminescence. The Ilari walked there, some made of flesh grown anew, others still shimmering data projections bound to mechanical forms. Each bore the faint mark of humanity somewhere in their design. The worlds were merging, not through conquest, but through understanding. He felt her presence sometimes. Not a voice, not words, just warmth, like sunlight breaking through cloud. It came when he touched the soil, when the wind carried music from the new city below, when the network pulsed softly beneath his feet. Lyra had become the code that linked it all. The promise he'd made so long ago had become something far greater than marriage. It had become rebirth. Mira approached from behind, older now, her hair streaked with silver. She walked with the confidence of someone who had outlived too many wars. "You've been standing out here for hours," she said. "You know you're supposed to rest sometimes." He smiled faintly without turning. "I'm watching them grow. You don't rest when a miracle's happening." She stepped beside him, squinting toward the city. "Miracle, huh? I remember when we couldn't find clean water, and now they're building symphonies out of light." "You're still half crazy, Kale." "Probably," he said. She folded her arms. "They're calling it the Concord now. Ilari and human settlements working together, exchanging tech, building ships. You started this." "We started this," he corrected. "Her, you, me. Everyone who chose to stop being afraid." Mira smirked. "And what about you? You've got light in your veins and half the galaxy worshipping you as some kind of bridge god. Don't tell me you're not afraid." "I am," he admitted. "But it's a different kind of fear now. It's not about losing her anymore. It's about becoming worthy of what she left behind." The wind picked up, scattering fine grains of silver sand into the air. The sky shimmered with faint energy, data currents visible to the naked eye. The network was alive everywhere now, intertwined with organic life. Below them, a group of Ilari children chased each other through the glowing streets. One stopped and waved up at Kale, their eyes bright and curious. For a moment, he thought he saw her reflection in that child's face, the same spark, the same defiance against darkness. He waved back, his chest tightening with something like peace. "They're holding a council tomorrow," Mira said quietly. "Humans, Ilari, even the off-world traders. They want you there. They say it's time to write the new accord formally." Kale nodded. "Then we'll go. You think it'll hold?" He thought for a long time before answering. "It'll break someday. Everything does. But maybe next time, it won't break in fear. Maybe it'll change in hope." Mira smiled, her gaze distant. "You sound like her. Maybe I finally understand her." They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. The light of the city pulsed in rhythm with the twilight, breathing with the world itself. Later that night, Kale walked alone to the edge of the valley where the first seed node still rested, the same sphere that had started it all. It was half buried in crystal soil, its glow dim but eternal. He knelt beside it and placed his palm on the surface. The light warmed beneath his touch, and the pulse returned, steady, familiar, alive. His mind opened gently, and he felt her again. "You did it." He smiled. "We did it. You kept your promise. I didn't know it would take a galaxy to do it." Her laughter came like music, soft and bright. "Love always takes more than you expect." He closed his eyes. "I miss you. You don't have to. I'm here. I'm everywhere you've rebuilt." He let out a shaky breath, tears tracing the dust on his cheeks. "Then stay. I never left." The sphere pulsed once, and a gentle wave of light spread through the valley. Every tower, every living root, every circuit of code shimmered in response, as if the entire world was breathing with her. When he finally stood, the stars were rising. He looked up at them and realized something quietly profound. For the first time, the galaxy didn't feel infinite. It felt reachable. Alive. Connected. He walked back toward the city, the hum of Ilari's song carrying through the night. Mira waited near the new gate, leaning on a railing made of woven light. "So," she said, smiling faintly, "are you ever going to stop chasing her?" Kale shook his head. "Not chasing. Just walking beside her now." "Good," she said, nodding toward the distant towers. "Because the new world could use both of you." They walked together down the illuminated path, the stars above reflected in the polished streets below. Somewhere behind them, the sphere's light pulsed once more, soft, steady, eternal. And as dawn broke over the reborn world of Tarsus 9, the human who had once sworn to an enslaved alien girl felt her promise complete, not as a bond of love alone, but as the foundation of a civilization that had learned, at last, to remember what freedom truly meant.